How about it for someone who has forgotten more about politics than most of us will ever know? He is Michael Shure, everyone. Thank you for your patience. You also, and I may as well get it out of the way now, may be the biggest Niners fan I've ever met. And I've met a lot of them.
Yeah.
So I have to ask you to quickly spend a beat here on the Super Bowl, what you're expecting, what you're hoping for, and then what you're expecting.
Well, I'm not going to be objective.
Right.
So, we know that. So I'm not going to say, I expect the Chiefs to win by 11. I'm hoping that the 49ers win the Super Bowl. I'm hoping they win by a lot, and I think that they will. How's that for...
Wow. You think that they will?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I feel confident about the Super Bowl. I think that the pieces are in place. I think that the Niners can exploit a Kansas City defense who has played really well in the playoffs, but had some difficulty in the regular season. I think Kyle Shanahan is. I'm not a huge booster of his, but I think that he is very good at exploiting weaknesses in defense, especially up the middle. Mm-hmm. By changing up play calling. And I think his play design is the best in the NFL. I think his play calling is not, but I think his play design is. I just think that it's going to be a good Sunday for 49ers fans.
So you don't expect a contest decided by a field goal?
I do not. No. I expect
wow.
Decided by more.
Wow.
I know it takes a lot to sway you when it comes to how to bet a game, Mark.
I know.
But,
yeah.
I know you fight back at any suggestion that anybody else might have. Right. But I think the 49ers will win by 6 to 10 points.
Wow, that's very, very cool. Well, as it said, from your lips. Now, It's been an eventful week. And by the way, Albert, just before I get too deep into this, did I push on to you the question from a listener viewer for Michael Shure? Do you have that?
Let me check. You just told me to remind you, but let me see if I can.
Okay, because now I'm looking for it and I can't look. But it was I remember what it was regarding, so I'll get to it. But before I get to the listener viewer question to Michael Shure, let me ask you, Michael Shure, about it's been a fairly eventful last day, right?
Yes, that's full. Things are happening.
Yeah. Do you want to start with the special counsel report on the Biden document thing?
I think that's where you ought to start because I think it's the biggest story. I think, we woke up with the Supreme Court being the biggest story, and it did not remain so. I think that the Biden, first of all, we're talking about the president's memory. America has a short memory too. I think what happens in February in terms of the substance of this, the stuff that could help Biden isn't going to matter in November. The fact that there were no charges brought is not a help in November. People aren't thinking about that. They don't look at Joe Biden and think that. His memory was an issue before yesterday, but to have it articulated in the way that it was, and to then see him come out and talk to the American people and make a mistake on a day where he should not have made a mistake is not good. That said, it was a mistake that people make, the type of mistake that people make all the time. His opponents did. Yesterday, Brian Kilmeade on Fox said South Dakota instead of South Carolina. Look, I just did it for Nikki Haley. I mean, these are things that happen. But when it happens to someone whose the perception is that it's going to happen more, it matters. And I think it also speaks to what a flawed candidate Donald Trump is, that he is not running away with an election against an 81-year-old man whose mental acuity, whether accurately or not, is being challenged by voters and by the media.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned you took the literal words away, which is flawed candidates. I'd suggest flawed candidates on both sides, flawed in the sense that you have just alluded to. Clearly, right. Voters have anxiety about the mental acuity of an aging president. On the other hand, his team, you could argue quite effectively, I think you could argue that they've done a really good job with a really tough situation. I mean, he came in the teeth of COVID and and with an international situation that was unstable, to say the least. It was just Ukraine then it turned into Gaza, as you know, last year, and you've got an economy that he had to write. So I mean, he's whitewater rafting through a lot with this administration.
There's no question. I think what you're also seeing is something that a lot of pundits, probably including myself, would not have predicted, which is the gradual emergence of a vice president now as being important and not being detrimental. It's too early to say that I'm right about this, and I don't believe in our lifetimes that anyone has ever voted for the race, that whoever the running mate has mattered. I think it'll matter now because I think that the heartbeat away stuff, the older you have a candidate, the heartbeat away stuff becomes more important, right? I mean, it's not a young John Kennedy being gunned down and Lyndon Johnson taking over. That heartbeat away is a little different. This is that he's 81, and so I think, and Kamala Harris is being forceful. She's being more present, and I think may end up being a help to Joe Biden at a time when he needs, he will clearly need some help on the campaign trail with demographics that she would help with, which is women and African Americans.
I mean, I'm getting in the chat from some of those going, how can you make excuses for Biden? He's clearly not, etc. But first of all, he's not as bad as is being characterized. And I'd suggest, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But I don't think you're making excuses. I think we're talking about this frankly, right? Which is that the administration has been objectively successful in getting things done that they want. Every president is a product of the time when he or she, still he so far, is president. And COVID, or the tech boom for Bill Clinton, or the war for George W. Bush, those are all things that, whether they're difficult or helpful, they define your presidency. I think, objectively speaking, he's been an effective president. Whether you like what he's done or not, it has nothing to do with it. So I don't think you're excusing it. I think there's an acknowledgement that he's 81 and has the things that come along with being 81 in most cases, but he's a good 81.
He's not running against a vibrant, younger 79-year-old or whatever Trump is. He's an openly corrupt, I'd suggest, and incredibly dim GOP candidate. I get it. He has charisma, and there's something about him that, you just like a car wreck on the freeway. You can't stop but watch or look or tune in. But that's it, because he's so brazen in his hate and in his ridiculous take on international relations and domestic policies, utterly without a clue. But that said, he is running neck and neck with this guy. Here is the listener question from Debbie in Idaho. Hi, Mark. I cannot listen until later, but could you ask Michael Shure how about how voter apathy and voters not liking either candidate may impact the election in a way we may not be able to predict? How many, and this is in caps, extra non-voters might be out there in the general election this time?
It's that I think this is a very good question and a difficult one to answer, because it's best answered after the election. A voter apathy when they don't like the candidates. I think the highest negatives we've seen about candidates were in 2016 when we had Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and that didn't keep people away. It kept some Democrats from supporting Hillary Clinton. It kept some Republicans from supporting Donald Trump, though most came around in the end, and on both sides. So I think that the voters were invigorated by not liking the other side. I don't know what, there's great vitriol toward Joe Biden amongst many of the ardent Donald Trump supporters. There isn't among, they don't like Joe Biden. They don't think he's been a good president, and they find flaws in his makeup right now. But I don't think you find the fire against Joe Biden as you might have against Hillary Clinton. How to predict it, it's very difficult to tell. What I can say is that both candidates clearly have problems within their own natural constituencies, is that establishment Republicans do not like Donald Trump. People are running against him. Even if Nikki Haley isn't doing well, she's taking votes away, which is Republicans saying, I don't want this, or independents saying, I don't want Donald Trump. And then on the Democratic side, Joe Biden is reportedly, though it hasn't really been reflected yet in places on ballots, having a difficult time convincing African Americans that he is doing what they want him to do, or Latino Americans. He came in saying path to citizenship hasn't happened yet. So in terms of getting their interest groups, special interest groups there, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge. But I think it's going to come down to whether or not America wants Donald Trump back in the end. I think we know what we know about Joe Biden. He's an older man, and that'll either hurt him with people or it won't. But Donald Trump isn't young. Donald Trump's mental acuity is also challenged. He is not what he was even 4 years ago in terms of sharpness, and he isn't required to be as sharp. He's not the president.
I'll do it once, and then we won't do it again. I will ding acuity. The
You
question.
said it. You said it.
You said, I said it and I didn't ding it. Then you said it, and then we both said it a bunch of times, and I realized we hadn't dinged it, and so
But
it had to be.
It's not me. It's a half a ding, like a half a sack.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I mean, we both get points, I suppose. Yeah. So the report. Do you agree with me that it was a late hit out of bounds to call him an elderly man who struggles with memory? And I mean, it seemed to me the characterization in the report from the special counsel was anything but objective. It struck me as a partisan hit job, frankly.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't think that that's what he was trying to do, though. And so I think that her intentions were not as they ended up seeming. I think he was saying that one of the reasons you don't bring a case to trial is, how would it do with a jury? Well, a jury is going to look at this guy and say he's an elderly man, which A, he is, who is sympathetic, A, he is, or B, he is. So I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. But it was still a late hit out of bounds. Doesn't mean there was intent to injure, but it ended up injuring.
There is another resignation from Congress. Another high-ranking Republican announcing she won't run it. It's Kathy McMorris Rogers from Washington. Yeah. Announcing that she will not be seeking re-election this year. Long list of Republican members unwilling to stay in office, Michael Shure.
Yeah, I think there's got to be real frustration if you're a Republican. I mean, it's frustrating enough being in the minority, but they're in the majority, and there's frustration. So, McMorris Rogers was John Boehner's, deputy at a time when the Republicans seemed, at least to Democrats, as terrible, but nonetheless capable, united, doing what they were setting out to do. It's just what their agenda was. And McMorris Rogers was someone who was, an intimate part of all of that. And now you can imagine how the John Boehner wing of the Republican House looks at what's going on there, and they just can't believe it. And there's got to be exhaustion. But the cynical way of looking at it is that McMorris Rogers, it must be tightening there. Washington State is a blue state. And maybe she also is reading tea leaves that I'm not saying that I know that. I don't know how Charlie Cook or Larry Sabato are rating that race right now as lean Republican toss-up. I just don't know. But it's a big name leaving the party, and what it symbolizes is a lot more than what the number in the House means.
What did you think of, and you may not have seen it, I watched a ton of it, too much of it maybe, last night, the interview with Vladimir Putin that was done by Tucker Carlson. It was essentially a sit-down he did with Putin, and then Putin filibustered about Russian history all the way back to the 8th century, and went on. The thing went on for more than 2 hours.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Tucker Carlson is not a journalist. He's an interviewer. So it seemed like it was very softballish. There wasn't a lot of pushback. I think Tucker Carlson's smart and didn't really show that very much, because he was allowing Putin to really handle the answers to the interview and not be pushed as to fact checking or anything like that. And it also shows that this is a very strange time. The people that were most of the ilk of the Red Scare, keep the commies out, are the ones that are now dancing with Vladimir Putin, who is waging war on an ally of ours. And the thought that you could be a supporter of Vladimir Putin's and and be okay in the Republican Party is a really bizarre, notion. As for what Putin said, I didn't do a lot of fact checking. Didn't have Chat GPT open. I just thought, that it seemed pretty, like you said, it was pontificating and giving a lecture about history, just way off on a tangent.
Yeah, pontificating. Let me get back to Congress real quick in our last couple of minutes and ask you about Ukraine, Israel, funding, and then the border. And that's been played as the political pawn now openly, without any sleight of hand, it would seem, by the GOP. Can you speak to those things?
Yeah, I mean, it's an election year, and their calculation, though there are reasons to be dubious of it, their calculation is that any credit that the Democrats get for helping slow the tide at the border or address the border or maybe change the news at the border would be too much to give to the Democrats, right? But now, as the story goes on and on and on, and more people are aware of what's going on, I'm not saying that everybody in America is, but the Democrats have now a way of saying, hey, Republicans are standing in the way of helping at the border right now, and we want to see it done. The other thing is the kowtowing to a former president, a presumed nominee, who is having this undue influence in Congress, also shows them as not a strong minority in the Senate or majority in the House. So I think politically, there are a lot of, Republicans are saying this too. I'm not the only person saying it. There are a lot of question marks as to what the motivation is here, because it seems like dumb politics, which are sometimes really good and have been very good for Republicans in the past, especially on wedge issues. When I say dumb, the basic, the Democrats like open borders and we don't. That's what I mean by dumb politics. Yeah, you could sell that, and they have sold it. But at this point, the other side is taking advantage of this, and I think that could end up hurting.
Wow, that'd be interesting if the Democrats could use it at all to, shine a light on something that should play to their political advantage. It's a legitimate problem, and
neutralizing it would be a win for the Democrats, right? Because
Right.
it is, and so if they can come close to neutralizing it, big ups to them, as they say.
Big ups to them, as they say. How about it?
I need to correct myself. I don't think anybody says that anymore.
All right, I think big ups. Albert, I'm going to call you in on the big ups question. You're a younger guy. You're more of the street, maybe. Does anybody say big ups anymore?
I like it. I think that's cool. I think we should bring it back.
Yeah,
it's not like a bad term. I wouldn't be mad at it.
But I'm correct for correcting myself, right?
Yeah, no one. When did it go out? Is my question.
As they say, they don't say it anymore.
Yeah, they don't say it anymore. When did they stop saying it, Albert? Do you know roughly?
Oh, I'm not sure. We just shout each other out, and we do that on this show too. Like, oh, shout out me for.
Yeah. We don't say big ups to. We say big shout out.
Big shout out.
Yeah, right.
Should we bring back big ups on the Mark Thompson show?
Maybe we should.
Big ups on the Mark Thompson show.
We can make a splash here. Do I have 11 seconds for an aside that has nothing to do with politics, but it's more on the big ups conversation?
That's a question I asked you, Albert. Does he have 11 seconds to do that?
Yeah, plenty of time here.
Go ahead.
So I was at a New York Rangers hockey game, and there was a guy in front of us who was in a triple XL Rangers jersey, and he said, "I'll take a hot dog and give me that. I want a huge soda." And so my friends and I were laughing, and we just adopted huge soda for people. So it became, among my friends to this day, like my ex-wife and friends from college say, "Oh, that guy was such a huge soda," right? we wanted to spread huge soda so that everyone in America was saying huge. It would be like a thing. Oh yeah, a couple of huge sodas from Staten Island came in, and they were at the table next to us. They were really good guys. They were real huge sodas. And a huge soda is you in your head, what it is. It's a big guy, and
right. With all the bigness that goes, not only physical, but just a big person. Yeah.
The huge soda.
But it never really caught on nationally. Big soda.
It didn't catch on nationally,
Yeah.
but not even a little bit.
No.
But
I actually have a
national-
question for Michael.
Yeah.
Michael, I know you're a Rangers fan. I heard that the Rangers owner, James Dolan, who actually owns or helped
The
build
Sphere.
that Sphere in
Yeah.
Las Vegas, wants to keep his first round pick because the draft, the NHL draft, will be at the Sphere. What are your thoughts on that?
and he wants to make a splash. My thought is that it is ridiculous. First of all, an owner cannot go to Chris Drury, the GM, and say, "Don't trade at the trade deadline our first round draft choice because I want to make a splash at the Sphere."
It just sounds so funny when you say it.
The NHL draft is a distant third in interest, and also, much more interesting than the Major League Baseball draft. But nobody pays attention to it. Like, you're going to make a splash. U2 makes a splash at the Sphere. The Stones possibly going to play there. Huge splash at the Sphere. The Rangers have the 29th pick of the first round. I wouldn't be watching by the 29th pick. And I watch the NHL draft every year. It is ridiculous, and James Dolan's a terrible owner.
Wow. That's a very
Good day, sir.
Okay. Now,
Yeah, exactly. I don't have to be objective. It's not politics. I don't have to.
this thing you've started with Huge Soda.
Yeah.
Was it Huge Soda or Big Soda?
Huge soda.
Huge soda. It's getting some love, so maybe it'll happen.
I love it. This is the best.
Yeah. There you go. This is where it started. And, we just passed 25,000 subscribers, so maybe it'll have some staying power. It would be.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Find Michael Shure. You see his videos all over YouTube and beyond. You can find him occasionally at TYT opining in one way or another. You find him here every Friday. He's been so great. You've been one of the reasons that we've been as successful as we've been. Thank you, Michael. Go Niners. Go Niners. Bye-bye, Michael. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.